Welcome to Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland, Peterborough South, MPP David Piccini. And David, welcome. And I thought we'd get right into it. We got lots of topics to talk to. It's been another busy week during COVID-19.
Yes.
So I thought we'd get right into the fact that we had touched last episode on the fact that you were planning on some economic recovery consultations, and the framework has been laid out. And by the list that I have in front of me, it seems like you're trying to touch on every aspect of the economy that might have been touched by COVID-19.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. Great flag. It's important that we bounce back from COVID-19. And to do that, I'm leaning on the experts, and those are members of our community. So working in collaboration with our chambers, industry leaders, different levels of government, I'll be launching sector-specific consultations across Northumberland, Peterborough South, bringing in feedback from, as I said, experts in our community, which will guide our jobs and recovery committee. Now, I mean, ingenuity, innovation, and creativity got our businesses in Northumberland, Peterborough South to where they are today. And I'm relying on that same prowess to guide our feedback and to guide the steps and actions taken at our Jobs and Recovery Committee to ensure that as we reopen this economy following COVID-19, we're doing the right things to support business, to ensure that they get back up on their 2 feet. And for me, it's important that we get a wide range of feedback across Northumberland, Peterborough South. So I'm really excited to do this, really excited to launch this. Folks can go on my website, my website is davidpiccinimpp.ca/recovery to sign up for the sector that most affects you.
Who do you want to hear from the most in this? Everybody or just the business people? Because I know you're hosting town halls where you're opening that avenue so residents can jump on board to hear from. But with these specific ones, are you looking just to hear from in specific groups such as the manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, and such?
Yeah, it's a good point. So, I mean, encompassed in these sectors isn't just the traditional notion of I'm a business owner or a shopkeeper. I mean, I could be a farmer, you could run a theater, a non-for-profit. You will have a home in these sector-specific consultations. Now, to your point, I mean, yes, I think too often bureaucrats and government employees speak on behalf of businesses. Our businesses don't want to hear from government bureaucrats. They want to be able to provide direct feedback and guide our response. And for me, it's important to listen directly to them and that they guide our recovery. And, you know, I sympathize and understand the challenges they're facing. And I know it's rich hearing from a politician during these times. And, you know, when I got elected, I've really endeavored to get out and to try and do things in a non-traditional manner. You know, I come from a different background, not in politics, family, a small business owner. My dad's a small business owner, and I understand, you know, worked in small business to help get my way through university in a deli. So, you know, understand the challenges that small businesses are in, but most I have a real fundamental appreciation for the remarkable work ethic of our small businesses across the South and want to lean on them. I mean, I'll be the first to say, I'm not the expert, they are. And I need to hear from them as we guide recovery in a manner that best supports them, given the unique realities we find ourselves in rural Ontario.
You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me as always is Northumberland, Peterborough South MPP David Piccini. And David, going back, just continuing on the consultations here, you've been one since you've joined the ranks as an MPP, and you've always been open. You've always been one that has thrown your cell phone number out there for people to reach you at any times, at all times of the hours. Some people may think you're crazy doing that, but that's the way you've done business yourself, and it seems to be successful. So I assume that you're ready to hear anything and everything that you're going to get thrown at during these consultations. And once you hear that, what do you do with all this information from these 6 consultations after that?
Well, that's an excellent question, Mark. And you know, as I said, yes, I try and be as accessible as I can. I'll be the first to say, whether it's a comment on Facebook or something, look, I apologize, I missed it, or you know, I missed your call. But yes, accessible 24/7 during especially these difficult times we find ourselves in COVID-19. It's the least I can do. That's why the people elected me, and it's a job I take very seriously. So one of the things I really pride ourselves on, both, I mean, we've got a phenomenal team here, phenomenal staff in the office, and also when I work with a phenomenal team. And so when I've been working with Ministry of Finance, the Minister Direct, he's put in a couple critical processes in place to triage this feedback. I mean, we have in our Ontario Together portal, the different deputy ministers as a lead for sourcing PPE, for retooling businesses. Conversely, in finance, we've got, I know PA Stan Cho I've brought out. He's done a remarkable job in triaging concerns we flagged. I mean, we had specific regulation concerns with our cideries. We fixed that, and I just got notification from Stan. Looking at retraining and wage subsidies for retraining of employees. Again, a piece that was advocated right here in Northumberland, Peterborough South, that's now happening. So, I mean, at its very core, if I can shepherd good ideas and advocate for the needs of our business, and we can fundamentally see policy changes as a result, then I feel I'm doing my job. And we have seen that in early days of COVID to date, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do that. And I would note as well that at the county level, Northumberland, Durham, and Peterborough, they're also doing, they're leading consultations that will all feed into this as well, and they're doing great work too.
David, not only are you looking for a consultation and looking for ideas, looking for information from all these sectors, but also the government as well has put out a survey as well, the Economic Impact Recovery Survey, where people can go online, and the website address is on the bottom of the screen. So not only do they have one opportunity with you, but the province is also looking for information as well from residents.
Yes, anyone is eligible to give their feedback. We'll, and there's no monopoly on good ideas, as I've always said. So we'll take a good idea wherever it may come from, and specific to the unique concerns, as I said, of our various sectors. We've got a number of champions here, and I'm but one. I mean, we also of our federal member, Eileen, as well, in our chambers. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the important work our chambers are doing, economic development agencies, DBIA. So this feedback, pushing it through as we look. And I would also note, Mark, important that I think we're one of the only governments in Canada that fundamentally leadership on behalf of Premier Ford. And I think when many other jurisdictions own books don't reflect the realities of COVID, I'm proud that our government moved quickly with Ontario Action Plan in response, and now looking towards a budget in the fall to guide our economic recovery.
You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. David, so to give someone a sense of how much work is going behind the scenes on all this, give us a sense of what your day kind of entails. I know that it's been early morning to late at night, but as well, just to give a glimpse of people that that you're always there, that you're working, and that this government is working behind the scenes to try to do what is right for all residents.
Yeah, so traditionally, I mean, I'm up very early, usually take a few calls between traditionally about 7 and 8:30, start our first Zoom meeting at 8:39 with the ministry. I'm, of course, PA in colleges and universities, so we have an in-depth discussion about our sectors. I just was off the heels of calling all of our presidents for our colleges and universities, and you can think of how many there are in the province of Ontario, and a traditional hour call each. I mean, that's an entire weekend of back-to-back calls. I can barely water the plants or walk the dog, and then I have a staff meeting here. My staff are working remotely, so we have a team meeting where we just talk about important issues, highlight things like this interview and other big events happening throughout the week, roundtables. I've got a weekly call that I convene with our mayors as well, and our federal member. We bring in public health and any other experts, like we brought in the finance minister one. meeting. Then, you know, we've got meetings throughout the days. I'm still doing meetings, so meeting with various stakeholders, be it a meeting with our hospital, be it a meeting with, you know, hospice or a group, Cattlemen's Association. I'm recently on the heels of a 2-hour or so meeting with the Cattlemen's Association, and throughout the day, you know, we'll catch up on phone calls, responding to constituents. Usually I traditionally blink and it's about 4 or 5 o'clock, and I still haven't, you know, through Zoom meetings and phone calls, haven't gotten to the substantive nature of work. But to put it in perspective, you know, I was on calls late last night, returning calls to constituents. Spoke to an RV, a seasonal campground owner who also runs a golf course, about some of the challenges. I was on the phone for about an hour with him. And then at about 9:30, got a message that an app that I've been working with app developers for COVID testing, the key to reopening the economy. They said, come on, check out our app. We're pleased to pilot it and demo it. So I hopped on a Zoom last night at 10 to have a quick look at that. So that gives you a kind of flavor for the day, and then back up and at it again, 5:36 the next day, out with Max in the morning.
And speak of Max,
there he is. Yeah. Stop.
We talked about, David, you brought up college and universities, and we're starting to see a little bit of unfolding. I know that Trent University and Fleming have announced that a lot of their courses may be online or different. It is going to be a little different than what normally. I know, just being where I am located, that the University of Ottawa is going to announce their plans as well today. What can the students expect to see in the fall?
Well, that's a really good question. And we have seen, obviously, universities are each governed under separate acts. And so they have a fair amount of autonomy, and we've seen movement. We as a ministry have been a helping hand on online platforms. Obviously, we did exam proctoring to support in continuity of education, have moved on OSAP to defer accrual of interest and payments for 6 months to help students give a much needed relief. And, you know, we've supported our institutions in looking at ways to bring curriculum online and shared common platforms. We're seeing some move to online in the fall. Again, you know, we're working. I'm hopeful that the immense sacrifices folks have made to date, that we can start getting back to normal into the summer here and get this economy rolling. But institutions are preparing for fall session, and we are seeing a number, including I think McGill, Queens, and a number of others who've already announced that they're going exclusively online for the fall semester. From my perspective, some of the advocacy, I mean, I've got a call this week with CMAC, the other ministers of advanced education across the country, and we're talking about things like postgraduate work permits. If you're an international student, our institutions rely heavily on international students who enrich our economy and start businesses here, et cetera, fill labor market needs. If the feds don't make some regulation changes, you know, they won't, that online portion won't count towards the work permit. And in some restrictions, it prevents international students from even starting a degree online. So we're trying to work this out with the feds. We want Ontario to continue to be competitive. We want to attract the best and the brightest from around the world to study here. And we want Ontarians to be able to have assurances that they can have continuity of education into the fall.
If we're up around the first break, just to tease a little bit to the viewers, when we come back, we're going to talk about the declaration of emergency extension to June 2nd that came out the day of this taping, and also the easing of some of the restrictions to get the province back in rolling. You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Don't go away. We'll be back with the second half of the show. Welcome back to Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. Joining me is Northumberland Peterborough South MPP David Piccini. And David, just before the break, we spoke about the fact that the day of the taping, which is Tuesday morning, the province would have sat in the legislature by this time and extended the emergency declaration of emergency to June 2nd. Why was it important for this government to extend it once more to June 2nd? There was maybe some talk in some circles that it may not have, but why was it important to get this going?
Well, I think we're not quite out of the woods, and there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. And as we gradually reopen the economy, it's important to have the ability as a government for us to extend the emergency order, because I mean we're not in a stage where we've seen a complete reopening of the economy, and we have to have an ability, should we see an outbreak, to be able to move swiftly. And again, that emergency order that we're extending is only for another 7 days. But an important principle today is that we have oversight, that we're bringing the opposition in, we're resuming the legislature, we're going to see question period. We will have seen already, viewers will have seen that. And that's an important piece, that we're held to account by the opposition. We're working collaboration. I think Ontario's been a great example of working with all parties. The government as well gave up some of our spots so that the independent members, independent Liberals, the independent Green, and the truly independent independents have an opportunity to ask questions and hold the government to account.
What's this going to mean for the after June 2nd? Are we still on the position where if June 2nd comes, where we don't see that we're out, that we will continue to extend the declaration?
Well, I think I don't want to predict what we will or won't do, but suffice to say that we'll take any and all measures to support Ontarians during these difficult times. But the important thing to note is that measures are working. We've seen very low numbers in Northumberland, Peterborough South, specifically in the county of Northumberland, and the measures are working. So from my perspective, I want to see things open up. I want to see folks get back to work. We're seeing people want to get back to work, but they have to do it in a safe and responsible manner, which is why we're working around the clock to ensure supply of PPE, adequate testing, and which is why, as I mentioned earlier, I'm on the phones well into the evening, wee hours of the morning, talking about things like apps that are passports and that can open up the economy through access and contact tracing and things of that nature, to ensure that we're doing everything we can to open this economy in a safe and responsible manner.
You talked about opening the economy, David, in a slow manner, and last weekend we saw a little bit of a glimmer of hope, where it was announced that stores can open, storefront businesses that have storefront that can offer that service, garden houses, greenhouses, those seasonal businesses that are really looking to make their money now when they usually do at the start of the spring season. How's that unrolling, and are you hearing any complaints at your level of any problems that people are seeing?
No, I've seen. I mean, our economy locally here relies heavily on folks like the Rona, in Newcastle, Home Hardware, Canadian Tire, obviously, and Home Hardware here, Port Hope, Cobourg, all the way up to Campbellford. Throughout our riding, we rely heavily on that sector. As a major employer, but also to support the construction sector, et cetera. So to opening that up, when we saw a movement back to sort of what the original essential services list was. Seasonal work as well, we're seeing that resume. I mean, garden centers as well, critical seasonal business growers. They've got a very finite window of time that they can make an income, and certainly to the extent that people can be outdoors in a responsible manner. Obviously, we want to make sure that that's done safely, but that people are going out there. So weather is getting nicer. We've obviously seen responsible fishing throughout our riding. We have avoided the influx of people, because people are behaving responsibly and they are listening and heeding the advice of public health officials. But it is good. I mean, I've heard good feedback. In fact, I'm hearing from many in our community who are saying, we want to open up as well. We're taking measures. So I think it was important that the government and Ministry of Labor announced, after our framework, announced guidelines that businesses can take to reopen. And again, that's on my website as well, and on social media, announced across all sectors. So depending on what sector you fall in, you can see sector-specific guidelines to help you reopen. And so that's key. It's got to be done in a safe and responsible manner. I've spoken with our mayors on our weekly weekly call. And many of them are articulating what their residents are saying, and a cautious and safe and responsible manner to reopening the economy. That's exactly what we're doing.
You're watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn, and David, about probably 3 weeks back, the Ontario government listed phases where we would go as to how the economy would, or where would we be? Are we even in phase one yet, or are we still trying to lead up into phase one?
Yeah, we're in stage one and looking at obviously moving into stage two, where we see a progressive reopening of the broader economy. I mean, we're seeing curbside now for retail. I think if we look into the future, we'll see things like by appointment only, and then a gradual reopening across the retail sector, and across all sectors. We want to see obviously elective surgeries as well back in hospitals, and as we ramp up for that. And prepare for that. But we're preparing for that. I mean, people need to know that we're working exceptionally hard around the clocks, working whether it be with the Retail Council of Canada. Heard them on the radio this morning speaking about steps the government's taken. We're working with our partners in the education sector, as I mentioned earlier in the show, working with the healthcare sector to ensure we're prepared. I mean, to date, we've been okay in our local hospitals. In fact, we've seen our hospitals have not had nearly the influx and are in very good shape locally, and they're working immensely hard around the clock. But also obviously long-term care facilities preparing as well, and that's been a significant challenge. Our LTC facilities, we're gonna have to look long-term. We already launched a staffing strategy, launched an action plan, and the ministry even announced a robust postmortem on this as well, to ensure we're in a much better state going forward. But it's not a problem that's, of course, happened overnight. It's been decades of challenges in this sector, challenges and lack of bed funding over the last decade that we're addressing now. So we're preparing across all sectors, and preparing in a responsible manner so that we can get Ontarians back to work and get the economy going again.
David, you touched a little bit about this area and how well we've survived this area, and I've spoken with Mayor Sanderson about this as well, and Henderson, and Mayor Henderson and the hospital CEO. It seems like the measures that were put in place by the government have worked perfectly in this area. I think the last count I saw for Northumberland was 18, I do believe. It just seems like what we did work perfectly in this small community that we have, and which is shockingly considering we're so close to Toronto.
Yes, I think the measures have been working, and we have a responsible community, but also a well-knit community, a strongly an integrated community. And you were there with me for the launch of our Ontario Health Team Northumberland. Of course, OHTN. I've had virtual town halls as well, which have been great, where folks have had the opportunity to speak to our healthcare providers, our leaders across various subsets of our healthcare sector. And so we're already closely knit. We're seeing a real responsible approach taken locally. I think as we look at health system transformation, COVID-19 has really forced a greater integration between hospitals and long-term care facilities. We, as I said here, already had strong integration. It's one of the reasons we were one of 24 Ontario Health Teams selected to start rolling out Ontario Health Teams. We're seeing remarkable progress here locally there, and really good results. Community paramedicine, which was announced before COVID-19, obviously a significant influx of funding into our local health funding. Of course, we've seen that as well locally, and greater integration to support the most vulnerable in our community. So we're in a position where COVID has posed significant challenges on our community, but our community's risen to the challenge. Certainly our healthcare sector, but also we've seen broader examples of the community coming together, whether it be knitting masks, whether it be coming together to develop a network for PPE creation. Our community's really stepped up.
Dave, we've got about 2 minutes left to go, and obviously we need to touch on this weekend. It's the kickoff to where usually at this time of the year, it's the May 24th weekend, the long weekend where people like to go out. kind of kick off. We've been cooped up in the house. We want to go out and enjoy a long weekend, but unfortunately, we can't. What's your message this weekend to the people?
Well, I think try and enjoy a weekend with your family, folks, your loved ones, and whether it be zooming with your broader family or the folks in your house going out for a walk, you can go to one of our provincial trails. Of course, we've reopened provincial parks. Presqu'île, will be open, and I think people are doing a good job at practicing social distancing when out in public. And I do that every morning when I'm out taking my dog for a walk, and I know many want to enjoy the outdoors. But I think this has given folks an opportunity as well to really reconnect with their kids. I've heard great stories as recently as this morning, talking to a constituent, but really rekindling and working on that relationship with their kids. Learning expands beyond the classroom or any online learning. While we've gone through great strides to ensure continuity of education. Education comes in many forms, be it building a little garden or cooking together as a family. These are some of the things people are able to do. We are gradually reopening this economy. I know people want to get out. We're there. We're getting there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm confident that we will be in a much better position into the summer, so that we can start getting back aspects of what is normal to our lives. But we're all in it together, and we're almost there.
David, thank you as always, and appreciate your time once again.
Thanks very much for having me.
You've been watching Queen's Park Report. I'm Mark Rockburn. We'll see you in 1 week's time.